This is the UXR Minds podcast with your host, Dale Husband, the place to get all of your UX and especially UXR career advice as I interview UX industry leaders. Remember to give a follow on the platform you're using to get this episode to keep up to date with each episode release. Now, let's get into today's interview. Okay, so I'd like to welcome on a very special guest today. I'm happy to introduce Amanda Jensen to the podcast. I'm glad I pronounced that correctly. I was about to say Jensen, but Jensen. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. I'm good. I'm at the end of my day, and I think you're at the start of your day, so we're both tired for different reasons, I think.
Yes.
Cool. So thank you again for coming on the podcast. Would you like to give maybe just a brief introduction as to who you are and what you're doing now?
Yeah. So I'm Amanda, and I currently am working at an AI research lab in the EdTech space. So oftentimes you'll find me interviewing middle school students, their teachers, and sometimes as well working in that kind of higher ed space as well. But my background is a little unique in that I was traditionally trained as a communication designer. So really looking at the psychology of how people interpret design and sort of information, that fastest distance from information to understanding. Okay. And I also have a studio art background before that. And I've done a lot of strategy work leading up to my kind of entrance into ethnographic research and now product and AI research.
Oh, wow. So you got loads of experience in different kind of fields, So I suppose all of that is helping you what you do now in terms of all the different skill sets that you've been able to kind of learn and take from those different fields.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's really, I like to, a lot like how I run a research study. It's very collaborative and I love co-design. So in the same way, treating my team members as stakeholders and really learning from them and absorbing their expertise and really infusing their insights into, everything from the end to end. So that study protocol clear through the share out, oftentimes even, they're, right in there in my interviews, just kind of observing or, in some cases acting it out as some of the Wizard of Oz methods that I like to do. But yeah.
So what's those Wizard of Oz methods that you like to use? Sorry, tongue twister.
Yeah, so it's kind of a pretty cool immersive technique. It's something I'd always done in prior media design and emerging technologies work, where you sort of create a near real experience, but it's just static wires. So you're playing like with the code, or rather the linking in Figma to kind of create this static thing to be as real as possible. So I collaborate pretty heavily with my UXDs and UIs to kind of elevate the work, and of course lean on my own design background to kind of bear in whatever load needed beyond that. And then it's sort of, especially in the more recent work that I've been doing around skills assessment for middle school students, looking at things like collaboration, effective communication, and critical thinking. How might we look at the kind of breaking the mold around assessment, not being a binary of pass or fail, but rather celebrating and looking at that journey of how we got there. How might we optimize that skill? And so I've been doing that a lot with this technique to create, even the characters and say a learning experience, to have some of my observers on the call acting out as those characters so that the kids get a really immersive experience. They're reading, a script from an instructional designer that was also catered to from a learning science perspective. So it's really kind of a village effort. And so what the cool thing about it is it creates just invaluable data at an early stage to where we can actually inform how to have really authentic measurement in that sort of multimodal or Gen AI space, so that it's actually inputs, whether it's text, audio, or responses that a middle school student literally would use and what they would say. And so that's why it's a bit of, acting it out myself, kind of, being a student with them, and we're journeying through a user flow. and just kind of doing that discovery and co-design together.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Really hands-on, working alongside the user, which I imagine is hugely beneficial, especially using this method as well of making it as real as possible, because that's when you get the best results, the best feedback as well, because it's as closest to reality as it would be for the user using it on their own. So that sounds
Absolutely. Yeah. And it enables our, developers and our AI capabilities teams and engineers the awareness to sort of see like what is actually hitting, but also
yeah.
saving insurmountable
Oh,
finances, things like that, because you can get a gut check much sooner
yeah.
than a coded version where we might find discoveries we didn't want to find per se.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's awesome. That's awesome. Actually, my background is in teaching and education, so it is something that like piqued my interest when you mentioned it. Then, is it like, are you working with public and state schools, or are you working with private schools? Kind of, what are your?
The real blend, charter,
Okay.
public, and private. And so we
Okay.
have a dedicated res ops team that, builds those relationships and sort
Mm,
of, finds those users, if you will.
mm,
And so we're constantly getting new eyes on the work, as well
wow.
as, again, with middle school teachers, anyone from 2 years of experience up through 30. So I tend to usually in tandem, interview both simultaneously, sort of like within a 2 week sprint,
Mm,
finding, collecting all this data, running multi studies
wow.
in tandem to then have that share out input and hopefully,
Mm.
some valuable recommendations from both sides of that lens versus just, say one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, oh, that's interesting. Super interesting. Cool. So I went probably a bit too far deep into the rabbit hole there because I wanted to like roll back a bit and just go back to right at the beginning and just ask you what have you always wanted to be in design research? Is it something from I don't know from being a young girl, something you're always interested in, or is it something that you pivoted to maybe later on?
Yeah, I mean, I would say definitely from a very young age, I was really interested, I think, in humanity
Okay.
and social welfare in general. I got the opportunity to do, which I think bleeds very much into, us being unique, creative, and the human condition. So in high school, I got the opportunity to work with like a youth global humanitarian organization and do
Okay.
some trips in the summers to both
Wow.
China and South Africa that were very much focused around either teaching English or just,
Wow.
social justice impact work.
Mm,
And it was just incredible exposure. Definitely, really, that was probably the earliest moment I can pin back to that ethnographer cap
mm,
being kind of put on. And, in lieu of that, also just being a very like creative, kid. I was
mhm.
always drawing and interested in color and even environment, like interior design, things like that as a child. And so when the older I got and then pursuing kind of college, I was always, wrestling with whether to pursue psychology or sort of
Okay.
art and design. And so I went back and forth, back and forth, back, and funny enough, like UXR is very much that. But I went into a communication design BA. So really understanding everything from fundamentals, typography, color theory, hierarchy, brand identity, things like that.
Mm,
But also a little bit deeper of that psychology layer, like I alluded to
mm,
earlier. But for me, I was really interested still in like how do we get that humanity piece in there? And already I knew that, I had to kind of do something that was, involving that. And
yeah.
so when I went into my master's program at Art Center, I was really kind of like enlightened. It was very exciting because it's essentially the marriage of the two. So
Yeah.
I really honed in on this idea of like design ethnography. So how
Hmm.
do we take the modality of being able to create and design work and do that with, participants and people in the field? And so from that catalyzed some really cool opportunities where I got to work with UNICEF and live and research in Kampala, Uganda,
Wow.
as well as, future, where I was doing documentary work in Belgium and all kinds of interesting, fun research. But it's always been for me that notion of, whether it's, and, I've taught design and research as well. So whether it's a student, participant, or, a user,
Mm,
um, how might I learn from them?
Yeah.
Because when I sit down to conduct or discover or learn about them, it's very much they're the driver of that.
Yeah.
Sure, I could have a semi-structured interview or just let the wind blow as it may, but ultimately, I do think that there is such power and beauty in that person being able to have that catalyst point. And if I can advocate for that in any capacity, that's
Mm.
all about. So I think that it's always been there, I would say for sure. The short answer. But the line has been
Always been
there
that kind
from
of.
the beginning.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, it's always interesting to hear people's like journeys into what they're doing now because sometimes they come from completely different backgrounds that you think, how did you ever end up in research? But then you
Yeah.
see like their journey and all the skill sets, even from something that doesn't seem to relate at all to design, communication design, research, etc. But somehow, some even soft skills or just technical skills you can bring to the table from different backgrounds. But yeah, yours seems to have been a long-standing passion for just people in general, I think, from humanities, which is really cool. Um, and in terms of your job now, what do you love about it the most? What is the thing that you think, I don't know, it just gets you out of bed every day? What is that thing that,
Oh. I think, one thing would just be that no matter where it is, what I love about currently is just that it's mission driven.
okay,
There's a desire to serve the education space, innovate within that space,
yeah,
and hopefully pioneer new ways of meeting, learners out there
mm,
who maybe weren't met before or
yeah,
maybe didn't thrive per se, say in a standardized context. I think that that's really enriching to me to be
yeah,
able to be on the front lines with them and learn from them and also infuse the findings that they sort of bring to the table and that we uncover together
yeah.
to my team and being able to really advocate and champion that
Mm.
that's just super fulfilling and meaningful to me.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. That would be something that would fulfill me as well. That's really cool. That's really cool. Also, one of the main reasons why I did want you to come onto the podcast was all of the mentoring work that you do. And I saw recently you were, I think the other day actually, you were recognized as in the top 1% of mentors on ADP list. So congratulations with that. Um, how did that come about? Was it, well, I can kind of already guess, but how did that come about this? Because you've touched on it slightly in terms of maybe some teaching that you've done, but do you want to expand a bit more on kind of what was the catalyst for you moving into mentorship?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a couple things. It's something that, I think when you've got that bug to be an advocate and a champion for others and to just support people, that's always going to be there. And you can link it very early on, I think, in life for me. But and also, when I was an educator, supporting my students in the unique ways that they needed that in whatever capacity. But it's something I've done for quite a long time. Like I
Mm,
would say ADP list is more recent. I only
yeah.
recently joined in February, but I've been doing some layer form or modality of mentorship for probably 15 years, I would say,
Wow.
whether it's with, from a youth capacity or
Mhm,
volunteer work
mhm,
or just, a friend of a friend, or maybe even at another stage, like career strategy. I've got a
mhm,
real strategy brain. So I love to sort of see someone's story, what's uniquely them, and how might we best, position you to elevate all the things
mhm.
that are fabulous about you, and then this role that you're like dying to get. So
Yeah.
I think that for me, it was funny. I was actually working with a very good friend of mine who was going up for a job that she was very excited about,
Mm,
doing a lot of career prep, and she was really impacted by just my dedication to the process from the design side. So I support her in that side,
mm.
like looking at her resume. I love a typography moment anytime I can get an InDesign. And then all the way through to like, prep in the interview,
Mm,
how could we leverage this? How could we
yeah.
synthesize this? How might we pull your life experience into your storytelling around how you made impact in this role or that role?
Mm,
Ultimately, she ended up getting that role.
yeah.
And what was interesting is she really encouraged me to seek out some kind of larger platform. You know, I've been doing this low key for ages, but so I sort of found ADP lists and applied and got accepted into that sort of mentor sphere. And this is like my second nomination now of a top research mentor this time now in product research. So yeah, it's been really wonderful. I think the ability, what's really cool to me about ADP lists that's beyond like my own ability to like reach out to people locally or grassroots is this global quality.
Yeah.
I can support people who are in an international context. I
Yeah.
can provide, empowerment or championing or cheerleadering to people who are on the East Coast and, all over North
Yeah.
America, just really anywhere in the world. And that's been a really neat thing about it. And it keeps me sharp. I get
Exactly.
inspired by mentees all the time. I get to go back into my design brain often when I'm supporting my, UXD or UI people, but also people who are just, super talented and
Yeah.
have incredible experience that I'm like, why you want to talk to me?
Can I talk to you?
Yeah, so it's been pretty it's been wonderful.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed it, and it's crazy fulfilling. Just lots of fulfillment all around.
Yeah, no, no, it's like obviously I've not got the experience that you've got. But even just through so I've been on an ADP list as well for a while, but I've kind of paused it just for the time being due to a few different reasons. But due to just my experience in just transitioning career, I know there's so many people
Yes.
out there that are doing that. So even just sharing my experience of what helped me, and like my volunteer work that I did, and yeah. So you're saying something, but it's not coming through. So
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that's your touch point around career transitions. I think is definitely something that I see, and I know I'm sure you have as well with mentees is this idea of discipline hopping. I like to call
yeah.
it like a career triple jump. I used to do track and field.
Oh wow,
Um,
that's a good analogy.
yeah. So, it's something that the job market is tough and I
Mm,
think it will always be tough. It's this kind of
yeah.
refining the fire, a little bit of a phoenix rising moment for us all. And it tends to always have its unique silver lining, I
Yeah.
think. When you come back to it in hindsight, believe me, when you're in the trenches, I mean, it's definitely no fun. And I know that for me, I actually created like a framework
Mm,
to work through with my mentees that I had wished I had when I was,
yeah.
more, a few years ago, searching in the market, pivoting from documentary research and
Okay.
now to, tech product and
Yeah.
AI. It's pretty synthesized, but ultimately something that I like to really focus on is this idea of like that and I've already mentioned it a couple of times, but what makes you uniquely you?
Mm,
Let's look at that
yeah.
storytelling. How might your passion, strengths, and
Mm,
motivations inform that? And then
yeah.
ultimately, where does that put you into where are you right now?
Yeah.
In terms of are you discipline hopping or are you like
Mm,
potentially like a recent grad or are you just looking to, enter the job market or have you been in it and you're just down and out and you just
mm,
really, need something.
yeah.
And the it's kind of like a four-prong thing. The third prong is, where do you want to be? And I always love to I would say like fan the flame rather than put it out in terms of this one could seem blue skies, I think, for, people, whether you're a mentee or you're superior or whatever, is where is that? Is that big tech? Is that, save the children? Like where are you really interested in working?
Mm,
And then think about how you might already be aligning with that.
yeah.
And how might those life skills, how might your professional skills be aligning in that? And then
Yeah.
ultimately leading to we're entering the like implementation phase. So that was a lot of introspection. So in the
Mm,
implementation phase, how do you get there? Reverse
yeah.
planning, right? So we would step backward, or maybe we would upskill or reskill in our current role, and also leverage those skills that sort of, do that for us, what makes us us. And I I'll be I'm definitely not the first to say it, but your professional brand is crucial. So, really having a voice and identity, leveraging LinkedIn and all its wonderment that it provides us, and just really, getting your voice, just like I would
Yeah.
teach my students in our brand identity and systems course, looking at like brand tone and voice. Just, you could be Coca-Cola and have a brand voice. You could also be you and have a brand voice.
Yeah.
And so I think really, determining what that is. Are you fun? Are you like knowledgeable? Are you using memes? Like, what are you doing? And like lean into that, because if
Yeah.
you're authentic and you're passionate, that's magnetic.
Yeah.
And people are just driven and like moth to a flame. And you being you is the best version of you.
Yeah, that's it's a nice way to put it. And like sticking with that brand, kind of getting your brand tone and voice, etc. Like there are people on LinkedIn, for example, that they're just known for how they are. Like you mentioned before, like using memes and that's
Yeah.
just yeah, that's just who they are, like their posts, etc. And as soon as you see, like, I don't even have to look at the name, and I know who's posted
Right.
it. Like you just
Just
glance
like
at
Apple, you know the
exactly,
typeface when you say it. So inside
exactly. So
you.
it's true, it's true. And I think that's so important because I think it's like there are so many out there, and you mentioned before as well about the job market's tough and it's going to stay tough. Like there's all obviously there's AI that's being introduced now, and it's only going to get harder as AI gets better and obviously becomes more sophisticated and just other aspects as well. So the job market is always going to get tougher, and there's always going to be more people entering the market as well, like new grads, people transitioning, like compared to from what people have told me, like now compared to even 5 or 10 years ago, like the amount of UX researchers, UXers, etc., has increased like tenfold. So it's only going to get harder, and probably it seems like the roles are less, but it's probably just because the competition is so high now. So I
Right.
think that's super important what you mentioned about finding your brand voice, finding just putting yourself out there and making yourself, well, everyone is unique, but highlighting that in some form,
Yeah.
whether it's your CV portfolio, through your interviews, and showing people what you can bring to the table, because everyone can bring something different and unique. We all have our own personalities. Some people are introverted, extroverted. Some people just come from different backgrounds. As I mentioned before, I actually interviewed one person on the podcast who
Mhm.
came from theatre and acting.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's super
Me.
unique.
Right.
That's super unique. And she was able to bring that to the table, and she was able to highlight that in interviews on her CV. And she kind of positioned herself as the actor UX researcher who in an interview can kind of act out the story of the product we use and bring them into. So that's super
Absolutely.
unique. So if you have
Absolutely.
something like that, like shout about it, like go on the rooftops and shout about it. Don't hide it. Don't think you need to be that, I don't know, that, what's the word, that cookie cutter UX researcher that has to know X, Y, and
Right.
Z.
That's going to get passed up real quick because there's just
Exactly.
lots of this. And I think this ability to be authentic, to believe in yourself and be your own advocate is huge. I always like tell my mentees, I know it sounds a little cheesy, but my mom always used to tell me growing up, you can do anything you put your mind to. And I wholeheartedly believe that, because if
Yeah.
you will, there is always going to be a way somehow. So,
It's true,
yeah,
it's true though. Like it is cheesy and cliche, but it's cliche for a reason because it works. Like if you put your mind to something, you can achieve anything you want. And I think those ones who probably feel that that's not true are because they've not followed through with that. Maybe they had a goal or something that they did dream about, but at the first couple of obstacles or difficulties, and they gave up or they stopped and it's impossible. Nothing's impossible. Like, well, probably a few things are impossible, but most things are not impossible. So if you like, I came from, well, I was in networking, Cisco in the past, then hardware, computers, all that sort of stuff. So I used to repair computers, games
right.
consoles. Then went into education and teaching, and then I decided I wanted to go into, because I did like dabbling customer experience and customer support and stuff. So I knew that I enjoyed helping people and like solving problems and helping someone realize their potential through teaching, etc. So I wanted to kind of combine those, like customer support and teaching. Stumbled on UXR, or just UX in general. But at the time, it seemed like a daunting task. Like when I looked on LinkedIn and all these, like, all these people and how much experience they had. But I stuck to it. It took time, but eventually I made it. Okay, now I'm unemployed again, but I still made it. Like I got, I got hired, I got employed. I've worked in the field a couple of years now, so it is possible. Like even from a non-adjacent field. So yeah.
Yeah, and I absolutely think that, it's really like what, how limitless can one be? I think the beauty of, being in this kind of era of like the 21st century is just that, unlike generations before us, you went to school or you did a trade or whatever, and you did that
Yeah.
for the rest of your life. And there is nothing wrong with that.
No.
I do think what's really special about the era that we're in now is just this ability to be dimensional,
Yeah.
to kind of absorb as much as there is out there. And also, I think there's a cultural, like a sociocultural shift around, when people are happy and passionate about what they're doing, they're going to be really great at it.
Yeah.
And so I think that, this fanning of the flame again of, seeking out what it is you might be good at, or you're curious, or you kind of lead by, what you're passionate about, that's always
Mm,
going to yield the best
yeah.
results. And I'll say this because I think sometimes, you know, the market is really difficult right now,
Mm,
but I think that there's something to be said about just acknowledging and letting yourself feel, really listen
mm,
to yourself and your body, and just that awareness of, yes, it's really hard, and it's okay to feel discouraged, and it's
mm,
okay to feel like hopeless even,
yeah. Yeah.
but like, acknowledge that, feel
Mm,
it, and
mm,
then find, whatever that action plan might be that works for you. If
yeah.
you need to like step out for a second, binge some reality TV, and then come back in and rework your portfolio, I think there's something really special about in coming in and out. And I've done this my whole, I would say, creative career, strategic, just anytime I'm like working, is I can be like really embedded in a thing. And
Mm,
then you start to hit like a wall, whether it's a job market search, whether it's a really complex
mm,
project or
mm,
synthesis, or, an immense, like, very scalable design, whatever,
mm.
it's like being able to go, you know what? I just need to step away for a second, and just recalibrate, go on
Yeah.
a walk, like play with your dog, like do, or find a dog, like,
Don't
like
steal someone
whatever,
else's
I'm
dog.
a dog mom. I like to joke I'm the Cristiano of the dog world,
Ah.
but like, yeah, I think that ability to like get back in your body and just
Mm,
allow yourself to, okay, like I just need to like, everything's telling me to like, oh, like back up. And then once you get in that high level space and you're not directly in that zone of thought,
mm,
oftentimes that is when inspiration like goes off.
yeah.
Like for me, I've always found like when you just step away just a touch, and then you come back into it, you realize like, oh my gosh, a new lens, or oh, I
Yeah.
cracked the code, or I figured out this, or blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. I saw this thing and I never thought about it in this context because
Mm,
I wasn't, so it's like
yeah.
this really cool kind of beautiful mind, like the numbers all moving around type of moment.
No, I completely agree as well. And I think like to add to that, so taking that time to step away from, because yeah, when you are in it, you feel the only way is to stay stuck to it and like every day, like, but I find like you get into a bit of a rut, like just doing like repeating the same methods, the same way of, I don't know, trying to find a job or whatever it is that you're trying to do. I find stepping back, but also just speaking to people, like obviously if
Right.
you've got family, speak to them about it, friends, just speak to different people, and you always find like someone will, even if they're not connected, like to what you're doing, your job, your profession, or whatever it is, they'll just give a different perspective from an outsider, not knowing the job
I love
market. and they'll give you an idea or a different way to, and you think, I've not really thought about that. And then you can go back to it with like fresh eyes from a different perspective.
Totally.
And it's happened to me so many times where I've just spoken to someone random and they just like say something inspirational, or they just give like a random idea. You think, that could actually work. And then you go back and then you can hit it again. And you have that kind of renewed energy, which sometimes you need, because like energy can drop pretty quickly if you're in the job market or you're trying to enter the field.
Yeah.
Your energy can drop really quickly, especially if you get like a lot of rejections back to back, which I've been through recently. So you do need that, like, to reignite that fire sometimes. And yeah, like you say, stepping back. Yeah, from my point of view, also speaking to people about it and what you're going through.
Yeah, and I think like there's also, for me, I've found that it's really beneficial to like get out of the medium you're currently in. So say
Yeah.
you're designing and you're just all up in Figma or you're doing whatever, like watch like some foreign cinema, do something that's just quite different than what you're doing, because again, it just like sparks go off, like you're reigniting or you're engaging in a space of creativity, storytelling,
Yeah.
positioning, that again, that lens shifting, or like the fog lifts, if you will. And so I think just stepping outside of your medium or modality to kind of zhuzh it up
Yeah.
and you're out, ultimately I think that's always when it's like light bulb, I realize
Yeah.
that.
That's cool. That's cool. No, I completely agree. And thanks for sharing that as well. Before we do, because we're getting towards the end, I would say, of the episode, I just wanted to maybe just pick your brains on, obviously, with your mentoring again, I imagine you speak to a lot of like newbies in the field. What is like the most common, I don't know, question or problem that they're facing, and what is the advice that you give them?
I think what I find is that it's a lot of figuring out, like, who am I?
Okay.
How can
Yeah.
I effectively enter this field, whether I'm a recent grad or I'm a research scientist and I want to go into UXR,
Mm.
or I've gotten a full range, PhD students, all
Can
kinds of
imagine.
different, kind of fabulous, wonderful people. I think it's like the storytelling, really. And I think that that's been the most fun to be able to support. It's like, okay, so like, what are you about? Like, and what are you
Yeah.
into? And, I love a portfolio review, don't get me wrong. It's like one of my favorite things. And it's fun, like as a, designer and, someone who like taught portfolio, like I, worked with upper division juniors and seniors in a design program. And I think that ability to kind of react to something
Mm.
and go, okay, so I'm seeing, like, I know you were in the weeds and this project took a long time, but like, how do we synthesize that? How do
Yeah.
we really sell this? How do we show, what it was, where you came in and supported this moment where you honestly are like the genius in the discovery of the thing or your new method or whatever you
Yeah.
implemented. And then ultimately, what impact did that have? And so we try to like oscillate like within that kind of structure. So I think ultimately it's a lot of like portfolio work, but also, a bit of therapy with the market right now,
Yeah.
kind of seeing like a whole mix and mingle. And I've got some mentees that I've been reoccurring meeting with for several months and some a
Mm.
year, and some that just, it's a one time, but it's really fantastic. And yeah, I would say those are some of the themes: portfolio, storytelling,
Yeah.
personal brand,
Okay.
um, and professional brand, but also just like the job market's terrible, please help.
No, no, yeah, that one is getting me as well at the moment. So I'll have to book a session with you probably on native feelers, because I think I need that inspiration. No, but thank you for sharing your experience. We didn't go too much into maybe like technical stuff today, but I think it was beneficial to go through, especially for our listeners, your mentoring side of things, and just sharing all these like gems of advice that you shared with us today. So thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And anybody listening, if you're curious about having a mentor, someone to collaborate or support you, you can find me on ADP list or ping me on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. So when I do share this podcast episode, I'll share your ADP list link if you want, and I'll also share obviously I'll tag you in the post. So any listeners that are listening, they can find you pretty easily. So thank you, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you, Dale. This has been wonderful. I so appreciate it.
No problem at all. And hopefully we'll get you back on soon if you enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, of course. Love to. You have a great day. Thank you.
You too.
Bye.